His answer disqualified him from being a donor then, and it still holds today. The result of a rule put in place at the height of the HIV/AIDS crisis that bans men who have had sex with other men from donating blood. When the rule was imposed in 1983, regulators wanted to prevent HIV from infecting the nation's blood supply. At the time, the disease was known as gay-related immune deficiency, and doctors believed that gay and bisexual men had a higher risk of contracting the virus and other infections such as hepatitis B.
In the early 1980s, America was gripped by the medical crisis known as the AIDS epidemic. Thousands of people became ill and died from HIV-tainted blood. And since that time, a policy still in effect has prevented any gay and bisexual men from donating blood. Now, 80 members of Congress believe the time has come to make a change. He is the award-winning journalist, law reporter for the Los Angeles Business Journal, and former editor of LGBT Weekly. Welcome, Tom Senzee, to MidPoint. Tom, thanks so much for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Tom, 80 members of Congress are asking, and this has been going on for decades. Why has it taken so long to get to this point so many years later?
Let me just correct one thing in my introduction. I do not work for the LA Business Journal anymore. That's a previous, that goes back a few years. I'm currently the world news correspondent for The Advocate. And when I was at the LA Business Journal, I was their law reporter in their Valley edition. And as far as this news today, well, this issue of the blood supply as it relates to men who have sex with men is the terminology used most frequently. There is a ban broadly that prevents men who have sex with men from donating blood and has done so since 1983. I think there is something really telling in the intro that you played. Something we used to, your intro called it something that used to be called the AIDS epidemic. We don't call it that anymore because it's not necessarily an epidemic or a pandemic the way we think of it from the 1980s. And I think it's time to look at those, and I'm not the only one, but a lot of senators and a lot of leaders in the public health community think that it is time to look at those standards and not have such a broad blanket policy that prevents a lot of people from giving blood who would like to and who have blood that is safe to donate.
It is fair to say that, when again, you are correct, the AIDS epidemic goes back several decades. But if you go back to that time, there was a real fear. This nation was gripped in fear at that point, that we simply did not know exactly what could be passed, how it could be passed. So fair to say that at the time, it was a real panic from people because we didn't have a cure, much like Ebola today.
You know, that is a good analogy, at least in terms of the fear factor. And you have not heard from the LGBT community a lot of pushback against this policy until now. And that has a lot to do with the reality on the ground. The situation is such that HIV is no longer the death sentence that it was. We know how to detect it in the blood supply and in individuals. We've been doing a good job of that for a long time now. And we stand to gain 250,000 pints of blood annually, and opening up the donor base by 2.5 million people, according to some estimates. And that blood is badly needed. You know, when your life is threatened, and you know the due diligence has been done, and you need blood, and there is clean blood. You don't care if the person donating it had sex with men or women. What you care about is that it's clean blood that's going to save your life.
All right, Tom, though, and let's be honest here, you and I will both agree that there are people in this world right now who will be frightened by it, who will look at it, and they will say that men having sex with men and blood being transferred, they will say that, I don't want that blood. I want to make sure it's not in my system. There's a chance that it still could be infected. You have to admit that that's still out there. So how do you then fight that? Because 250,000 pints of blood, and you're going to have people out there screaming, there's no way to know if it's not infected. We cannot take the chance.
We need to know that our blood supply is safe, and I am not going to poo-poo someone's fear about being infected with bad blood. And that could be a possibility, but it's also a possibility with hepatitis and every other infectious disease that is out there. What I think people are saying is that having this draconian sort of policy that is really emanates from that fear that most people who were around then and are alive today would acknowledge was a little bit over the top, is translating to a policy that in 2014 is a little over the top. The Obama administration has come a long way toward considering repealing that policy, but what they want to do is rather than a lifetime ban on donations of blood by men who have sex with men, whether or not the criteria will become whether or not you've had sex with another man in the past year. But again, I'm not going to poo-poo someone's, dismiss someone's fear of a tainted blood supply. I almost thought, Ed, you were going to say that they might be afraid that they would become gay if they had a gay man's blood in their body, which would, of course, go against the superstition that being gay is some sort of a choice.
No, we were not going to go there. But
No.
I will ask you this. I realize you're not a doctor and you can't speak of this from a medical terminology, but could you say to the people out there who are fearful of getting some sort of an infection through blood that has been given, that it will be completely checked out and completely clean, and that it will be filtered and it won't be infected in any way? Can we guarantee that 100%? You know people are going to ask that.
Yeah. No more than we can guarantee that it will be hepatitis-free. We can guarantee that, and again, I'm not speaking as a medical professional, but the vigilance and the due diligence of our nation's, the custodians of our nation's blood supply, it is their job to ensure that our blood supply is safe. There is something discriminatory about choosing one particular disease that we have a pretty good handle on these days, that is related to the LGBT community, more specifically than any other one community in America. There's something about that does smack a little bit of discrimination. Again, because we're talking about people's lives, the gay community has not been very vociferous about this because we do respect people's concerns, but we do believe that those concerns can be readily, handily, and thoroughly addressed with modern science, and we're ready to do that.
We will follow the story, and of course what you say about not 100%, that's definitely what a lot of the medical professionals will say every single time you talk to them about this issue and anything else regarding blood transfusions. Tom Senzee, thanks so much for spending the time with us, and Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays to you and yours.
Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays.
All right, take care. Break, and we return with yet another hint from the Fed about those dastardly interest rates. The Money Master has to check out Wall Street for us and find out what's happening as we head towards the holiday. And coming up later, we go back 70 years to a time that changed American military strategy forever. That and so much more right here on MidPoint, where we question everything.